remembering why the work is important and why we love it. Thank you for hitting that record button, Tony. I appreciate you in the background there. So before we get started, I just have a couple of short little housekeeping agenda items to get through. My name is Daniela Labate Cavelli. I work at NIAPRS and I'm the Director of Managed Care Readiness. So I'm going to be in your background hosting today, playing back up to Rob Statham, which I will introduce in just a minute. So Rob, if you could take us to the next slide for the housekeeping. Today's, well, that's all right.
Let me go back.
That's okay. Today's webinar is being recorded. You'll be able to find the recording as well as the PowerPoint on the NIAPRS website, and we'll post that. Today is Wednesday, so we should have that posted for you by Monday. We are offering 1 CE credit for social workers. That's LMSWs, LCSWs, CPRPs, and LMHCs. It's a whole alphabet soup back there. So if you would like to have your complimentary continuing education credit, we do ask that you complete the evaluation form, which will be emailed to you within 24 hours of the end of today's webinar. And we ask that you return that back to our office within 48 hours, and we'll process your CE in about 45 days. So the only other thing before we get started is, Rob is going to present a whole lot of information. We ask that, you be part of the conversation. You can use the chat box if you like. We're a smallish group, so we're able to actually unmute you. So if you raise your hand, I can go ahead and unmute you and you can ask a question. I think we're going to hold questions till the end though, right, Rob?
That's fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob so that he can introduce himself and kick us off.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Daniela. So welcome everybody. My name is Rob Statham. I'm a trainer and technical assistance facilitator for NIAPRS, and my region is the western and central part of New York State. I have been in the field, so to speak, of mental health for about 20 plus years. And a lot of the work that I've done has been in employment, supported employment, direct placement, those kinds of things, job coaches, job development. So some of the stories I may share may be from that background. I've been training now for about 7 years. I trained on the OPWDD side as well, but a lot of my experiences are actually outside of the field. I was a hotel manager for a number of years, a paralegal, a volunteer coordinator, recruiter. And actually, I got to address the last thing. I am a former boy band member. We were signed to a record label and then dropped by that record label. So got about 3 minutes of that 15 minutes of fame that we all kind of seek. All right. Obviously, this is what NIAPRS does. We consider ourselves a change agent dedicated to improving services, public policy, and social conditions. And we're really, really big on 3 R's: recovery, rights, and rehabilitation. So these are some of the things that hopefully we come away with a good understanding of today. We're going to recognize how the prevalence of social isolation, loneliness, and civil unrest have contributed to our shared feelings of stress and burnout in the field, and how those same things has actually helped us to kind of return to what's important. And that's going to be the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today. Hopefully you can walk away feeling energized and empowered in terms of returning to the work that matters to you, that has personal meaning and joy for you. And we're going to have some self-care exercises and strategies that I'll be kind of reviewing with you to prevent workplace burnout. And the best way I know is to find meaning in your work. All righty. So I want to kind of talk about how we got to where we're at. We've been through over the past 2 to 2.5 years. Obviously, we know that we've been through COVID, and we've had individuals that maybe we've lost, or we've gone through the 6-foot distance rule and the isolation that kind of comes from kind of working from home and those kinds of things. There's been civil unrest, and we've seen groups of individuals that have really been marginalized or continue to be marginalized, as well as really affected more deeply with the whole COVID thing. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that and kind of understanding that a little bit and how we've gotten through these things. Now, I will say, and I mentioned it earlier, that it's very interesting that these things that we've been through has caused a lot of us to reevaluate what we do. I've always found it interesting that when we apply for a job, we get that interview, and usually in the interview, the question is asked, why do you want the position? Or why are you interested in the position? Or why are you interested in moving into the field? And we always have good answers. We're usually very excited to be the possibility of working in the field and getting started, particularly if we're younger. But we stop asking ourselves that question, or that question stops being asked of us. And wouldn't it be great if, after 90 days, you've done your first 90 days on a job, if your supervisor kind of walked up to you and said, how are you feeling being in the field? Do you still have the passion? Do you still have the energy and that wonder when you first entered the field? Or if not, what can I do as a supervisor to kind of get you there? And maybe if we had this, maybe even as a part of our yearly evaluation, we ask the question, why are you still in the field? Or why, what are your meaning? What personal meaning do you attach to being in the field? That is a question that we really need to continually ask ourselves as we go through the years, because sometimes, and I'll admit it, I've been in the field 20 years, and probably a lot of folks here have been in the field a long time. And maybe let's just ask in the chat, how many years have you been in the field? But here's the thing. When we've been in the field a long time, we kind of find ourselves on a hamster wheel, where we're just kind of going through the motions. We come to work, we do what we do, not really attaching meaning to our work. And I'm talking about personal meaning. So because of these things, because of COVID, because of the civil unrest and the changes that we've seen, we've actually kind of gone through or are going through something called this loneliness epidemic, where we're isolated. I find it fascinating that this thing here was supposed to connect us in a lot of ways, but a lot of us have almost kind of felt isolated by it. And the number of people who are feeling isolated or disconnected in the age of connection is surprisingly growing. And if you take a look at the slide here, there's a lot of, younger people are feeling it, younger or older people are feeling it. We live in the most technically connected age in history of civilization, yet the rates of loneliness have doubled during that time. And this really speaks to this idea of connection. We all want to feel connected. And I'm not just talking about connected relationship-wise, but we want to feel connected to the work that we're doing. That's actually will help you avoid that place of burnout or that place of even compassion fatigue, right? So because we want to feel connected more than ever before, because a lot of us are feeling disconnected, we're feeling lonely. And that has an impact on our health, on our physical health, on our mental health. We know that there is a deep correlation between that. So if we're taking a look at this slide here, whether it's, seeking the comfort food when we're lonely or so isolated, that's probably not the best for you. We get our cookies and our sweets and those kinds of things, the fatty foods. We reach for those things when we're lonely. And those things can lead to obesity, diabetes, all the stuff that you see here on the slide. And so we really want to pay attention to how we are connected to people and how we are connected to the work. In addition, I want to briefly talk about the Harvard study of adult development. Some of you may know this, but it's actually one of the world's longest studies. They've been studying individuals who either went to Harvard in the late 40s, so it's been a long time, and they've also been studying individuals that have just lived in inner city Boston over that period of time. And the impact of this study continues to this day. And what they discovered was almost like a no-brainer, but we forget about it. That close relationships, more than money or fame, are what keep people happy throughout their lives. So my question would be, how are the relationships in your life? Because those relationships, those ties protect people from life's discontents, and they help to delay a mental and physical decline, and are really good predictors of a long and happy life, even more than the social class that a person belonged to, because we're talking about two distinct different classes: inner city individuals who lived in inner city Boston, and then people who went to Harvard. So totally different class there. IQ and even genes. And it's not like these individuals had perfect lives. They had storms. They had rough times in their lives. But it was, for the most part, those close relationships that helped people thrive and survive. And when we think about the work that we do, we have a gift in human services. The gift is we are allotted time to really develop relationships with people that we serve and support, and with our coworkers. Critical to life satisfaction, as noted in this long study here. So, asking the question of why you do the work that you do and why you love it is simply essential. And I call it kind of working from the inside out. It's really a Simon Sinek kind of way of looking at your work. Because we know that when we know our why, which is really our belief in, why we do what we do, so to speak, it has impact on how you do your work and what you do in terms of that work as well. But the why, as I said, it's your belief, but your belief forms your attitudes about work, about people around you, about the people that you serve. And those attitudes inform your actions, your everyday actions of the way that you work. And we want to remember that. We want to continually remember that. I'm going to have us watch kind of a cool video that kind of explains right in the video what it means to know your why and work from your why. So let's take a look at this.
This is called How Do I Know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what, the key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just gonna show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director? Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got. Amazing I see. So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose. This is called.
Interesting that gentleman, it was almost, it could have been a different tune almost. It was remarkably different because he knew, he assigned personal meaning to the work of singing that song. And we can do the same in our work. It's just remembering it, remembering why we were passionate about the work that we did, or why it really lit us up when we entered the field. Now, you have ways to do this all the time. This slide here really talks about one of two studies. They're both business magazines, Forbes and Fast Company, but they talk about, you know, when people attach meaning and purpose in their work, they have higher job satisfaction, lower turnover, which we all could use these days, and less really physical and emotional signs of burnout and job fatigue when they have meaning and purpose assigned to their work. And one of the things that I think is kind of important is to look for these moments. I call it looking for moments of joy in your work. And I know it's hard to do when we're really busy, but find time to look for your moments of joy. Because here is the fact. If you're not looking for these moments of joy, you will not find them. And it doesn't have to be, you know, something extraordinary that happens. It could be something as simple as somebody told me a joke in staff meeting today. I'm still laughing about it throughout my day. Or I had a really deep conversation with a coworker today. I felt supported. Or maybe, you know, for somebody that we served and we saw some remarkable progress in our day with that person. These may seem small, but they can be fuel for you moving back to your meaning and purpose and your moment of joy at work. Again, if we're not looking, we're not going to find it. And spend time kind of looking for those personal meaning and joy in your work. So I want to kind of throw out a question to the audience here, and that is, well, really two questions. Does your job have meaning? And can you share an accomplishment you're proud of at work? So let me go back to the first question. I will 100% agree that most everybody will say, yeah, my job has meaning, especially in human services, because, you know, we're helping people. We sometimes see the fruits of our labor in helping people. But that's a little different than attaching what is personal meaning to your work. So I will revisit that question and ask the audience here, does your job have personal meaning? And can you share an accomplishment that you're proud of at work? So this is your chance to brag. And so we can field your comments through the chat box, but we'd love to give you the mic so you could just share a little bit about your own personal meaning that you attach to work or something that you're proud of. All right, we've got two hands raised. So Daniela, if you could raise them, I can't see who they are. So
You got it. All right, so it looks like I'm gonna unmute. Adrian, you can go ahead. Oh, sorry, that's Sierra.
Hi. So my job 100% has meaning to me because of the fact that I'm a peer in recovery myself. And so being able to just go around and share my story to help others and just having that commonality and that relationship that you've built with somebody so quickly, just by sharing your story. The position that I'm currently in right now, we work inside of the hospitals when the members are still in crisis. And so, and then after they discharge, we're following them out in the community for those for 90 days and being able to watch them grow from where we met them in the hospital to 90 days later, and being able to show them the goals that they've met, the progress that they've made, and just to show them that recovery is possible, and being able to just build that connection while they're in the hospital, for them to build that trust just with your lived experience, for them to want to work with you for those 90 days. It's just so rewarding. They say that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I can honestly say that I haven't, just because I'm able to take everything that I went through and help others with just my experience and my journey.
Thank you for sharing. And Sierra, I heard you use the word connection.
Yes.
Peers have a special connection with people that we serve and support. And again, especially after the pandemic, we are looking and searching for connection. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute, and I believe it's Andreen.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, you're everyone needs to speak?
Oh,
Anyway.
I'd seen that you raised your hand, so I thought you wanted to speak.
Oh, but I mean, I could share. I am an admin, and I've been an administrative assistant for a long time. And I work in a community service organization. And my purpose, or why I like to do this job, is because I feel I'm helping people. And in this environment where it's mental health connected environment, I feel that, my purpose is to help.
And you raised a good point that I want to make here, is no matter what your role, everybody has a role in terms of a person's recovery. No matter what position you're in, if you're the administrative assistant, you have a role in a person getting well and going through recovery. Even the janitor who cleans the place where we have groups, again, they have a role in a person's recovery. We all want a place that we can go and have, that's clean and bright. So everybody is important in terms of the work that we do in a person's life of recovery. So thank you for kind of refreshing my memory with that. Any other hands raised, Danielle?
I don't see anyone else right now. Oh, actually, I lied. Someone just raised their hand. Look at that. Oh, I think it's the same. No, I don't think there's anyone new. Sorry. It's the same
no
hand
problem.
from before. No problem. You're good.
Okay, cool. One last call for people who want to brag, just putting that out there.
I want to brag.
Okay. So once again, assign personal meaning to your work, no matter what job you have within the field. Just assign that and reflect on it and think about it. I think, the one thing that the pandemic kind of forced us to do was a lot of re-examination of what is important in our lives. So we are primed to go back and ask this question of why we entered the field or why we're in the field right now. And the bottom line is this: it is about relationships. And if you've taken my trainings with NIAPRIS, I am over and over again telling people that the number one way that we support people in recovery is through relationships. And it's no different, even if you're not in recovery. Relationships make everything. I do a gratitude journal. Every day I write out something. And the bulk of the things that I'm thankful for is not the stuff. It's the relationships that I've had or have on a given day with somebody. Almost 2/3 or more is devoted to that. these relationships, as was kind of in the Harvard Adult Study, are the things that really matter. So we need to take time in terms of developing these healthy relationships and doing the work of forming relationships with our coworkers, with people we support, because those relationships are going to be the things that help us through difficult times as we've been through. And it's going to be that way in the future as well. So make time to connect with people that you work with. Make time to connect with family members if you need support in that way, or connect with people that you serve and support. It is critical to our work. All right. So now we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit. I'm going to kind of give you some tips as we're kind of venturing back in person, into in-person. We've done a lot of virtual work and working from home, but a lot of us are now starting to finally go back into the office. And it's a new world in that office, so to speak. So the first thing that I ask people to do is be compassionate with yourself and other people. Because as we come back to the office, we really have to keep in mind what people have been through over the last 2+ years, whether it be losing a loved one, or whether it be maybe they had COVID. Maybe people are still fearful about COVID and getting COVID. And so maybe, people are a little scared to return to the workforce, or work in person, I should say. Give people grace during this period of time, and especially give it to yourself as well. So I like this one about being intentional with your time and energy, and set expectations. So if you're the kind of person that kind of just rushes back to the offices and gets in with the old way that you worked, it may lead to burnout. If we're not a little bit more strategic with how we set our energy. And maybe it's a kind of re-examination of some things. Maybe we have to kind of develop a new routine. So we're used to our work from home routine, but now it's kind of back to the routine of going back into the office. And it's been 2+ years since we had that routine of getting up on time, getting to work on time, packing our lunch. The kitchen's not right behind us anymore. And so establishing this new routine, it may be important for your mental health as well as your physical health to establish a new routine as you return to work. Now, the great thing about this is, and we've kind of learned this from, kind of being uprooted from our old routines, from working, when we did go to work previous to the pandemic. Now we spent 2 years plus working from home. It took a while for us to get used to that routine, but I guarantee you this, a new routine of going back to the office will be established. And again, the more you practice your routine, the easier it's going to get for you as you go back to working in the office. Also important to set boundaries with individuals, and also in the way that you set boundaries with your work. So maybe you set aside, I don't know, maybe a couple, half hour during the day to totally unplug, to shut your email off so you're not distracted. We get distracted when we always have emails coming in, or the phone's ringing, or we're being texted, and that throws us off from our routine, so to speak. So maybe setting a boundary related to communication may be something that you need, or maybe setting boundaries of now we're coming back into the office, and there's a whole lot of people now in the office, and we're kind of used to working alone from home, but now we have everybody's back in the office, needing a piece of our time. Maybe we set a little bit of time for ourselves as we return. And obviously, when you connect with people, remember what they have been through, and always take care of your mental health. I find it really interesting that a lot of our organizations have EAP programs, but a lot of us don't use the resources of EAP. And let me tell you, I've looked through EAP. They have resources on almost everything you can imagine, from financial health to physical health to emotional health to mental health. And normally at EAP, the EAP is mentioned at onboarding or orientation. And then it's also mentioned to us when things aren't going well. But maybe there's things on EAP, and I know there are, that should be kind of continually mentioned about just staying well and using the resources that are there with EAP. So returning to the office in terms of how the organization should respond is really helping to create an ease back to the office. And that may mean the socialization factor. A lot of times, when we come back to the office, or when our group of us have come back to the office, the administration will put out a lot of social activities for us to become a part of and get together with people. Maybe we don't need that right away. We need to kind of ease our way back into the social space, because maybe some of us are a little nervous about being in that space again. So to have all these activities, while it's well intended, may be something that we want to not so much kind of hit hard, and just kind of let people kind of ease themselves back in the office at their pace with the activities that they may find helpful. Secondly, you may want to establish team rituals as we come back to the office. And one of the great ways that I've heard that can be done is through something called an empathy circle. Because remember, we've come back to the office after being through things. And an empathy circle just gives people space to connect with people who have similar experiences, who have had things happen to them during the pandemic, and to reflect and show compassion for the things that we've been through. And I know no better way than connecting with people through empathy and compassion. That is a deep, deep connector. Thirdly, rein in the scope creep. And when I talk about this, I'm really talking about our roles. Our roles when we went to virtual work changed a little bit. We almost got things added on because we can be a lot more productive when we're on Zoom. If you're, maybe when you were pre-pandemic, you would see 6 people a day as a part of your workload. You'd go out in the community and see six people. But maybe now you're seeing 12 people because you're at home. You don't have to drive anywhere. One person gets on, the next person's on right away. But now we're back to the office. And do we really want to expect someone to continue with that, seeing 12 people now that they're in person? Because now we have to consider time. We have to consider some kind of socialization that occurs in the office. And so this may be a time to kind of re-examine, job descriptions that maybe changed during that period of working at home. Fourth, create more recovery time. And what I mean by this is give yourself time and use your vacation, use your sick. If you have sick time, use it. This is time for you to get bounced back. This is time for you to rejuvenate and recover. And I love this last one, and I'm deeply appreciative at NIAPRIS that we are allowed to do what I call deep work. And this is like removing those distractions, as I mentioned earlier, to really think and reflect. Allow for that time to think and reflect, to ask that question, to answer that question about meaning and purpose at work. And if you don't have time to do this when you're at work, and I get it, sometimes we're really busy, we don't have time. Allow for this in your personal life. You will grow, you will develop, you will think differently if you have the time to do what I would consider deep, reflective, hard-hitting work. And I also kind of refer to it as kind of working on yourself in a way, and allow for that time because we need it. That can be used as for our rejuvenation at that. All right, so more about how management can support us kind of returning to the work that we love in person here. You may want to meet with, before or during your return to work, with a supervisor or support to determine what you need. again, what you needed before the pandemic, now could be other things that you may need that you didn't need prior to the pandemic. And if your supervisor doesn't know that, or you're not aware of it, again, spend some time thinking about what you need in order to do your job well and to remain well in the process of working. So learn about your supports that you need. Understand what you may need to feel safe and do good work in the way that now that we're returning to work in person. You might want to also describe or discuss how would you like information shared when you come back to work. So maybe other people came back to work earlier than you did, and you needed a little bit more time before you came back to work. You were fearful or a little bit, there was a little bit of trepidation in terms of you coming back to work. And so people may have questions. Again, when you're talking about returning to work, discuss this with your supervisor as to how you would like the information about why you didn't come back with everybody else. So you can have that, that promise or that ability to share what you want to share at any given time. Again, keeping that information private. You share what you want to share with people that you work with, and even the people that you support as well. And then discuss any kind of training you may need or resources or information that you may need to just kind of get back up to speed with the work that you're doing. And any agency that really invests in training, you're doing your staff a tremendous amount of favor when you're providing good training for them. And because, I know a lot of us, if we haven't been trained well, we're not confident in our jobs. There's that unknown piece there. So spend time to really re-onboard people as they come back, and give people the information and resources that they're going to need and the support to be successful. And some of it, honestly, is about good old-fashioned self-care. And so the first thing that I think about in terms of self-care, and that I kind of want to take a look at, is I want to take a look at some of the things that may be challenging me in terms of the work that I do personally, and really that all hardworking professionals face. So one of the things that I know, in kind of having the ability to kind of examine myself and know myself well enough, is this. I know one of my challenges is I have a real difficult time with giving things up, so to speak, or delegating. I've always had that. And in order for me to work on that, I got to know about it. I got to be reflective and know that I'm kind of heading in this direction of not being able to hand things off to people. That's going to be my warning signal here that I'm maybe reaching the point or kind of heading toward that burnout stage or that compassion fatigue, because I'm aware of it. And so again, we all have things in our work or in our lives that may serve as a trigger or a challenge, but we got to be aware of those things. And we have to be able to identify those things if we're going to work on them. So whatever it is for you, it may be, maybe you don't like, maybe you have trouble delegating like I do, or maybe you don't like conflict, or maybe, you have trouble with a person who's micromanaging you. Whatever it is, identify it, because if you don't identify it, you're not going to be able to challenge or to face that challenge. Secondly, again, this kind of goes, what I've just been saying is be aware of your own personal vulnerabilities, the things that may be troublesome for you to work, or people you may have some trouble with. Again, knowing yourself, and this is more that reflection work, that examination work that needs to be done, where you kind of shed light on your personal vulnerabilities. Be aware of those, because those are signs that you may be headed for burnout. Achieve more balance in your work. So I'm going to say something here that not a lot of people say when it comes to work-life balance, because a lot of people say 50-50, work-life balance should be 50-50. I'm not a believer in that. I believe you have to find your own balance. So you may love the work that you do. I love the work that I do. My balance is probably 60-40. I love to work. I love the work that I'm doing. So I don't mind doing that 10% extra. You may be one of those people, but you have to find what your balance is. And I'm sorry to say it has to be 50-50. If we can't give less than, 50% on our job, but find out what the balance is for you. And if you're a supervisor or manager, allow for that balance. Allow for that balance in your the people that you supervise in their work. And finally, you may want to unplug. What I mean by that is disconnect from your email, disconnect from this thing, and just not be so plugged in. It's really interesting. I remember a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, I took my family to Red Lobster. And I noticed a table, actually several tables around me, where half the people at that table were not engaged with the conversation that was going on at that table. They were looking down. They were looking at their phones. And, phones are important. I get that. But they weren't connected to the people that were right in front of them. And so we miss things right at the table in front of us. I actually, I was told in another training about the antidote to that. And the antidote was when you're out to dinner with people, and everybody has a phone these days, ask for something that you can put everybody's phone in and put it right in the middle of the table. And the first person who reaches for their phone is the one that has to pay for everybody's meal. And let me tell you, there won't be many people reaching for their phones. Unplugging is sometimes the best thing that you can do. And my brother, who also works for NIAPRIS, he occasionally takes does what we call digital fast. And so he won't use digital devices except for work. During work hours and things like that, but he won't, he won't watch YouTube. He won't, read the news online. And every time he does that, I find him to be in so much a more pleasant and happy mood. Because I'll be asking him, "Oh, hey, did you see what happened in Rochester today?" And he'll be like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." And I gotta tell you, he's in a wonderful state when that happens. When he takes this digital fast. And that state is called oblivion. And actually, sometimes it's not a bad state to visit. Because again, with our devices, we're always getting notifications. We're always getting information. And sometimes it's information overload. And sometimes, we're constantly checking our news feed and it's rather negative, right? And so when we have a chance to unplug, to get away from things and really do some deep thinking and reflective, that is a great tool for you to use in terms of your own personal self-care. Maybe you want to put together an individual wellness plan for yourself. And I know because we're in the mental health field, we all know about RAPs, Wellness Recovery Action Plans, but maybe we put together a wellness plan for ourselves in our work, where we assess our areas of vulnerability and things that may be risky that will lead us to that place of burnout. Maybe we, as a part of this plan, we suspend any negative judgments about ourselves. And believe it or not, those negative judgments can rule our day. We spend a lot of time in negative thought. I mean, I'll use a perfect example. When you've gotten your evaluation, you get your yearly evaluation, and it's pretty good. You did a pretty good job on your evaluation. But there was one thing that needed improvement. When you walk out of that room where your supervisor gave you the evaluation, what's the one thing you're thinking about? I'd say 9 out of 10 times, you're thinking about the thing that you needed to improve upon. You're thinking about the negative thing that was on that evaluation. So consciously take some time to suspend those negative thoughts or judgments as a part of your individual wellness plan. talk about your strengths and your assets. Now, it's really interesting that we spend a lot of time working from a strength-based perspective, or seeing the people that we serve and support from a strength-based perspective, as we should. But it also applies to us. How are we viewing our strengths, our assets, our capabilities, the things that we bring to the table, our good things that we do? Assess those areas. Ask other people what you think they think your strengths and assets may be. Now, we do know that there's going to be barriers. There may be barriers for us doing good work, just as there's barriers for people that we serve. Everybody has some kind of barrier. But we have to be able to identify these barriers to work on them. And I'm a big believer in barriers are not flaws. They're things getting in the way. And so we want to do whatever we can to go through that barrier, around that barrier, over top that barrier, underneath that barrier. Ways in which we can get to where we need to go. So we have to identify that for that to happen. Unload up on those resources, as I mentioned, whether it be a training or some sort of best practice material that you can get your hands on. Maybe your coworker is a resource. NIAPRIS can be a resource for you as well. You also may want to pick a particular focus of something that you may need to work on, and really spend your time and energy focused on that one thing that you want to improve upon. And then obviously it's also important to pick what I would refer to as an accountability partner. This is someone who's going to walk with you as you are working on yourself in this one area. It's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym by yourself, you're less likely to go. If you join with a buddy, you're more likely to go because you've got support, and your friend needs a ride to the gym and you don't want to disappoint that friend, right? So pick somebody that's accountable, that can be accountable to you. So again, we do these plans, we do WRAP plans for people that we support. We should have our own individual wellness plan as it attains to the work that we do. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about this slide, which is peace. And despite what people think, peace is not a place where it's free from noise or trouble or hard work. Peace is actually in the midst of those things and still being calm in your heart and mind. And I'm going to use an example, a work example, actually. I went from being a volunteer coordinator at a hospital here in town in Rochester, and it was a wonderful job. It was quiet, calm, right? I love that job. But then a layoff hit, and I found myself having to go and work as a recruiter for a staffing company. And that environment was the exact opposite of that peaceful, calm place that I was in volunteer services. Because in this environment, it was loud, it was noisy, it was chaotic. There were literally people running in that office. And I'm talking running, because the way we worked was the more people we got to work immediately after we met them, we would run to the computer, put that information in so they could get on the road, and we could start billing the customer. So there was nonstop chaos during in that job. And I remember my first day on that job. It was overwhelming. I went home that night and I said to myself, what the hell just happened? I went from this peaceful job to this. How am I going to make it? And I then kind of spoke to myself, and I said to myself, Rob, there's nothing on this job that's going to change. It's just the way it is. But what I can change is how I react to that job, how I react to that chaos that's going on around me, to that noise. And I can't say that it happened overnight. It took some time. But I got to the point where I was actually at peace in that job. I didn't feel the rush. And I felt at peace, even in the midst of being in this totally chaotic environment. And maybe you have those moments as well, where you feel like you're in a really chaotic environment. But it's how we react to that chaotic environment that can really bring peace of your mind and your heart and your soul really to the work. So this is us, guys. Apply these strategies to your own lives and the lives of coworkers, any of the strategies that I've talked about today. Take an opportunity to connect and deepen the relationships that you have with people that you support or work with. Those connections, that sense of belonging is super important for us and for the people that we work with. And people are looking for that more than ever. People are looking for connection. Maybe you take that phone challenge when you put your phone away and you just don't spend so much time connected to your phone. And obviously support people in your circle who may be lonely or isolated. We're all coming back from this pandemic in different ways. And some of us have felt more lonely and more disconnected and more isolated during this period of time. So reach out to those people, be that person that is supportive and understanding and provides this person with grace for what they're going through. And even, as we make mistakes, as we come back, there will be mistakes, but allow for a bit of grace when that happens. I'll leave you with some final quotes here. And the first one is, we either make ourselves miserable or happy and strong. The amount of work is actually the same. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% of how I react to it. And we can't direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. Lots of resources here. So when you do, you will have access to the PowerPoint that will be on our website at in the next week or so, I would believe. But let me just ask, anybody have any thoughts or questions on the presentation today? We got about 4 minutes left, so we can take some questions.
So Rob, it has come to my attention while you were presenting that the chat feature had actually been disabled the entire time and we didn't know it.
Oh no.
So we've been missing all kinds of things in the chat box, and I'm so sorry about that. It seems to have been resolved, and I see that Joanne just typed something in, so I'm glad that this is working. So people can now feel free to use the chat box and type in their questions. You can also ask to unmute, and I can do my best to unmute you as well. So I'm so sorry about that, but I'm glad we did get it resolved.
Well, we do have a couple minutes left where people can, ask a question or two,
Yes.
write a comment in the chat box, or we'll give you the mic. You can use the mic and ask a question or comment if you like.
Someone just chatted in the chat box. Excellent presentation.
Oh,
And
great.
yes, it was.
Awesome.
Thanks for the presentation and the reminders. Great. Thank you, Wendy. Oh, and I see we have some folks that raised their hand. All right. Here we go. All right, let's see here. This is odd. Andreen, are you raising your hand again?
No.
Oh, your hand's still raised, my dear. All right, no worries.
How do I lower it?
Zoom is incredibly glitchy today. I don't know.
Yeah.
But great presentation.
Okay,
All right, thank you. Yeah.
So Joanne said she's taken lots of notes. As always, you were brilliant, Rob. Thank you, David. Appreciate your dedicating time to this topic. Appreciate the webinar being presented. I enjoyed and learned so much. Oh, Mariam, I'm coming to you now, Mariam. Where are you? I just have to find you in this very long list. All right. Go for it, Mariam.
Hi, everybody. So, hi, Rob. Great
Hello.
presentation. I wanted to jump into the section where you asked about bragging, about what you do, how you do, and how you might be affecting or helping others. I've been in this field for quite a minute, roughly since 1988, honestly. And so I've seen a lot of things. I've been in a lot of different types of agencies, have had support, have had no support. And that kind of taught me how to do, I believe, the job I'm doing now the best. I am the user support staff for the Academy of Peer Services. I work for NIAPRIS, but that is the position I'm holding as the user support staff. So I get all the calls and all the emails from anybody who is under stress, trying to take those courses, trying to navigate that website. And just under any kind of duress. People just call to dump sometime, and I allow it because I understand where they're coming from. When I took these courses, there was no one here to answer my calls, to support me, to anything me. And so my brag part is that I believe my position is extremely valuable because sometimes I am that frontline staff. I am that first person that people get to talk to, that first person that people get to have any interaction with, trying to become a peer in the first place, trying to see how can I get out here and help someone like myself. Do I qualify? Am I worthy? Is it even possible? I've had a ball of mess in my whole life, and I can't imagine having something to share with anyone else. And it makes me feel amazingly blessed to be the first person to hear that person speak and support them and encourage them and uplift them and, and hold their hand and crack jokes and, scream at them if necessary, shake them up, to get them moving. So that's my brag, that I
Awesome.
actually get to do that with people. And I find it to be amazing. Something else I was going to say, but I forgot right now. Yeah, so this is, and I, in turn, am one of those people who most folks think, oh, she's so social. I'm really not. I'm more recluse and an introverted kind of person. But I've learned to be approachable, I call it, so folks can talk to me at any point. But I know many people have that same placement. And so I have been one who presently still sends cards to people. Sometimes I send them anonymously. If I have your information, I might send you a card with no return address, because it's not about me getting the acknowledgement that you got the card, but it's me thinking about you and hopefully giving you that moment of upliftment whenever you finally receive that card. So I encourage everybody to do so. A little note, a little happy face, a stamp, anything, just drop it on their car window. You know what I'm saying? You just never know how it makes a difference in saving someone's life that day. Because for me, that's how I move. I do what would have saved my life at any one of my bad days. So I try to give that, or that's my pay it forward. So again, Rob, this is amazing training. Thank you so much. And thank everybody else for being here and doing the work. I appreciate you.
What an impact that you have, for someone who's really struggling with the website or whatever, or information. You may be the person that kind of, in the way that you have worked with this person decides to carry on. So, it's really super important. That's kind of what I'm kind of referring to when I talk about personal meaning rather than just meaning.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you, Mariam. Thank you, Rob. And thank you to all of our participants today. It's always wonderful to be with you. We look forward to seeing you next month for our next webinar. And look at that. We have somebody from Canada with us today. Thanks for joining us from Canada.
Awesome.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. Take good care of yourselves. And thanks so much for joining us. Be well.
Bye-bye.